There is a very tall figure, a man with a dark red body and horns. And this place looks somehow dry, rocky. It is another realm with a yellow sky, yellow creamy, very different to Earth.
And when you look down at yourself, do you see your feet?
I see myself as I am now. I recognize this place as a place where many things started, where so much started, decisions, fated decisions.
Where decisions were made, do you mean?
Several talks with this man took place here. It is like a realm of hell, of experiences, to gather knowledge of darkness. But it all derived into a despair because we forgot how to get back to the point where it all started. The decisions fragmented in such a way that we forgot little by little the pieces of knowledge that had been retrieved as to take us back to the beginning, to undo what took place during the darkest decisions.
How tall is the male?
Very tall, like many feet taller than me.
Would you say 7 or 8 or 9?
A lot more, like probably 12.
Okay. And what does his face look like?
He has a white beard, big eyes. It is unclear, but it's like an older figure with red skin, not so similar to human, with what appears to be like wings around his eyes, like probably part of his skin. All of his skin is dark red, but around the eyes, it's like white, creamy. He seems to be tired.
What color are his eyes?
Dark with yellow around his pupils and iris. It is hard to distinguish between pupils and iris.
And what does his head look like?
He does not appear to have any hair except 2 horns.
How long are the horns?
Not too long, only curved and almost same color as skin. I feel cold.
What direction does his horns go?
inwards, curved inwards.
Is that facing you or to the side or behind him?
Sometimes he faces me directly, other times he seems to be looking to the horizon, to one side, like pondering.
Is he carrying anything?
No, sometimes he places his hands on his legs, like standing a little curved.
And what is he wearing?
He seems to be mostly naked.
Are you carrying anything?
Yes, something like a vase, a container of sorts,
What color is it?
brown,
Do you know
made of,
what's it made of?
it's made of clay or something that looks similar to clay.
Do you know what's inside?
There seems to be a dark liquid. At first it was dry, but now it is filled with a dark, sticky liquid.
And how do you feel being there?
I feel worried because it seems that I have to go back to this place, perhaps too often. I seem to forget this place whenever I incarnate with the mission to undo darkness. But then I come back and talk to this man and show to him in this vase or container how much of the ancient darkness I have retrieved and if it is enough or not. He seems disappointed, but not really at me. He just seems sad to see that the more I retrieve of it, the more it has grown into our worlds, like it is never enough.
What happens to the darkness that you've collected?
We throw it to the ground in hopes that it can be purified on its own or it just fades. Like when you throw a poison to the soil and you expect it to be cleared on its own, and it goes on and on. I do this too often. I pick up darkness and then I just throw it to this place. I know it's progress, but never enough.
And do you know what that place is?
It's like an ancient hell, one of the many hells in our universe, where we just throw away as much karmic depths as possible. We leave it here.
Are there any other good places that you know of to leave that dark?
there does not seem to be any, because there are lots of places where dark is stored, but it keeps playing out on its own, like wars, for example, like it goes out of control. And this place is like a desolated container. It is a silent place, and there is only this man who is like an ancient sage.
Do you know what his name is?
It is something like Roseus or Rosetus.
Do you know how long he has been there?
For too long.
What is his role and purpose there?
He's like a record keeper. He has a desk. He receives souls from the afterlife, but also this realm is physical, and he just receives people to bring all this darkness and talk about their findings with the expectation that all this record keeping can help humanity to make better decisions. He's one of the so many ancient beings we can call upon when we have to review, but he's tired of receiving all this darkness in small portions. He's tired because he would want to see something different.
Does he specialize in any type of soul that he receives, or can it be anybody?
Mostly the souls that have made decisions related to experiencing darkness and creating darkness.
So would you say that it would be souls who have chosen the dark side?
Yes, he's specifically there like a guy who has known so much about darkness, mostly from observation. So he has an objective view of it, and we, the ones who have often chosen dark paradigms, it is like a reminder of what we must do now to come out of it, undo those decisions that originally served a purpose to experience, but that at some point we must leave behind for good. So yes, in a way, anyone could go there, but I think that he specializes in specific kinds of decisions. So not all souls are so often seen there with him.
And do you know why he's tired? What are the reasons?
More than anything else, he's tired of seeing the cycle being repeated over and over again. So he's tired of seeing the same dark goals being played often in our galaxy and even beyond. So what he would expect is that we just come out of the same dark decisions collectively over and over again, and that people started reaching out to him with new stories, like maybe telling him, this time I found the new solution to undo this kind of darkness.
Do you know what he would prefer to be doing or what he would like to do next if he had a choice?
He would simply be happy to start seeing different new outcomes so that eventually he can just stand up from his desk and turn into a light being as he's meant to be. I see him transform into a younger man, still with horns, but very different. He's no longer old. His skin is no longer dark red. He's just a light being, like golden yellow, white, feeling proud of people, proud of himself and everyone else.
Do you know why he chooses to look like he does with the horns?
It was darkness. It was darkness what created his species. It would be very similar what you call a devil. You know, the kind of red being with horns.
Mm.
He's not evil. He's just old and sick. So he grew old, and the landscape is just sick, desolated, like all other hellish realms.
Does he have any darkness within him?
Only the poison of sadness, despair, and disappointment.
In his past, was he a dark person or has he always been good in that lifetime or experience?
He seems to have experienced wars, but somehow managed to overcome much of his own programming. So, in this consciousness of his, he remembers many things, but he feels trapped in this place. And more than the place in itself, it's more like the situation that he has chosen to serve this role for humanity, to humans, and for humanity, and for other beings of darkness. So he was originally a light being. He looked strong and determined to experience. And now he's just old and weary.
So would you say he's a positive, higher vibrational being?
Yes and no. He's not evil, but he's just tired, like his light has dimmed over time. It would be more like an old accountant who is just there sitting at a dusty place, not moving anymore, doing anything else.
What's an example of how he helps one of the souls that comes through to him?
In the process, he receives them, recognizes them, and with his old eyes, he stares at what they have to say and bring, and say probably something like, okay, you come again here, having made the same decisions. What have you learned? Have you noticed something different in your reactions? Are you aware of what you did now? And so on.
So would you say that the type of soul that gravitates towards that realm are the souls that have explored the dark to a greater degree and not so much the light?
Yes, exactly.
And would you say that his purpose is, well, he's got an important role, of course, to receive such souls, but his purpose is also to help them return to the light?
Yes, to help them return to the light through just reminders, but mostly to question them. Like, for example, to make it easier to understand, when you make science, you pose questions, and by the end of your project, you just report your results from the experiments you create. And in this case, he just wants to see if we have retrieved enough information or knowledge about love as to make things differently now after the dark decisions take place. Like if we have learned how to come out of them.
Okay. Earlier you spoke of that being a place where you or where there are dark decisions being made. Can you explain more about that?
It is hard to go back to that time, but this place is like a station in between from what was the beginning and what came afterwards. So we always come back to this place. But there was the usage of highly advanced artificial intelligence to experiment with different unknown paradigms. Our current society is a reflection of some of the very worst expressions of artificial intelligence because it is based on darkness and not love.
So would you say some of the planning took place in that realm with regards to that?
No, it was a different place. This one was chosen as the many hells where people could start redeeming themselves and their decisions. But before this world even existed, there were several other worlds. There was no concept of hell as we know it now here on Earth. Hell was meant to be originally like a prison where darkness could be contained, but it expanded across the universe to several stations and paradigms, combining those original decisions of artificial intelligence and other experiments with darkness. So now people are confused about the concept of hell in itself, because it englobes many things all at once. But originally, the darkness that was created could have been stopped if it had not have been because of the paradigms in which synthetic tools were used, and now we're stuck with them in our world, in our current world, as a reflection of other worlds that went through the same path.
Do you get a sense of what connection you have to that being there?
An old friend, but one that I tend to forget too often, as if I and others have abandoned him to this fate with our decisions.
So are you saying the reason he is there is because some of you have made certain choices so that he remains there?
Too many of us, too many humans, way too many, I would say.
And would those decisions just be the behavior and choices that people make as a human to explore the dark? So he's still required to be there to process when they pass on?
Yes, but at this point it is obsolete because we have explored this path too many times already. So what we see now is nothing new, really.
And that is why he's so tired.
Yes, exactly.
So what you're experiencing right now, is that going on right now, or are you picking up on a memory from the past?
Yes, I mean, a memory from the past, but also one of the future of many humans and the present, because it is the cycle of time.
How long have you been going there and helping to collect that dark energy?
It is like a loop. It started since the day this world where he lives was born. Since then, we go back to it over and over again.
So are you separate from the souls that pass on, that he helps? Have you got a specific role to collect that energy separate to that?
Every world we touch, we go back to this one, but it has been diminishing in some ways because then we spill over darkness in other places and we forget to collect it and leave it here in this world. So now the darkness has grown everywhere. It was originally meant to be contained here. So we just spill there an amount of it, while in other places humanity has let it grow.
How many of you are there that are collecting that energy?
A handful few, the ones who remember to pick it up and leave it there, while the rest remains in other worlds, just letting dark play itself out.
And how often would you collect that energy and return to that place?
I cannot remember. It is hard to tell by now.
For example, would it be once per lifetime, or are you seeing yourself between lives, or are you seeing yourself as like a permanent role or permanent job at some point within a different life? How does that work?
It is like part of my soul is stuck there. It started out physical, in that place, but then we go back to it over and over, but only part of our soul keeps doing that. And the same applies to other beings, other people. I cannot tell exactly how often. It is just there repeating itself out, the scene of this part of my soul doing this over and over again.
So I'm just trying to work out if you're a specialized helper or you have a certain role, or if you and all souls end up doing this, if they need, if they are exploring the dark and touching too much on the dark, or if it's kind of separate, how would you describe it?
Many of us volunteered a long time ago to experiment with darkness. It was not too many people, just a handful few, but then it expanded as many more volunteered, more and more joined within the experiments, creating a huge collective. So we are trying to figure out now how to undo this. But in order to undo it, we must remove synthetic paradigms of artificial intelligence so that people can start feeling more and more who they really are, because these kinds of technologies are preventing people from feeling and allowing energy to flow in its natural course, allowing darkness to dissipate. But as people choose to embrace these technologies, we remain stuck.
What's an example of that technology in today's world?
I see a chair. There are like gadgets connecting me to a TV screen, like I am being programmed to believe certain things. It is the kind of technology that, for example, militaries use, but it propagates easily to the collective through subliminal messages everywhere, because you are programmed not to feel through these technologies. You avoid yourself, and people of Earth are heavily programmed through these technologies, and it can only be accessed through the subconscious mind, and do it little by little. Otherwise, it would overwhelm people. So it has to come little by little through these kinds of therapies, soul retrieval.
And do you know why you are being shown that experience in that realm today?
Because we want to come out of this programming so that we can all feel what we are going through collectively, not just individually.
So earlier you said that he felt you didn't have as much as you should have as in the dark energy. Did he communicate anything else after sharing that?
No, he wants me and others to explore the solutions because he's not fully aware of where the original darkness comes from. He has his own limitations. There are hidden technologies in our past that have been used to reach this point. So you can see that people are not inherently evil, but that they are programmed by technologies.
And are you one of the ones that volunteered to explore that darkness?
Yes, I need to undo what has been done to me in this room where the chair lays, where I am being placed as a prisoner, experiencing this darkness in front of the screen.
Do you know if that was one of your past lives?
Yes, it has been many similar ones.
And does that male being there know how you can undo that?
No, he does not know. Only I can know if I can access it.
You mean access it when it took place?
Yes, when it took place, what was done to me and to others. Yes, I am already there.
Okay.
I feel heavy, locked or trapped in this chair. So many things like circuits, cables, and these metallic things attached to my arms.
What is the location on your arms that it's attached to?
My wrists and upper arms. I cannot move.
How old do you feel?
I am young.
Do you know if you're female or male?
I am female. I am the same Karla.
Would you say your 20s or your teenage years?
Between 20s and 30s.
Can you see the color of your hair?
I look just the same as now, but that is probably a protection, subconscious protection, because I take many forms in this chair because it has been playing out many times.
Playing out many times to you?
Yes, several lifetimes.
Do you mean that you end up back in that chair in different lifetimes?
Yes, similar chairs.
Okay, just stick to that lifetime that you're seeing. Is there anyone else in the room?
They are hiding. It is male presences. They
How
are
many?
there and not there.
What do you
2
mean
or 3.
there and not there?
I get a glimpse of them, but at the same time, I am alone.
Yeah. Would you say that the kind of coming and going from the room?
more like they want to be seen and at the same time not.
And describe what the room looks like.
Small and dark. There is like a door in front of the chair. It has a window. There is a dim white light outside. I cannot see what is outside. This is like a laboratory specialized in this kind of programming.
So there's just one window.
Yes, only that door with the window.
What size is the window?
It is a glass placed on the door.
It's part of the door, okay.
Yes.
And did you say that the door leads to the outside?
To a larger place like a facility.
Do you mean on the other side of the door that's still inside the building?
Yes.
And what's in front of the chair?
Part of the small wall and the door.
What did you say? Part of the door? Did you say?
Just a small wall.
So you've got these devices attached to you, but do you see anything else in the room, or how are they affecting you?
There is what looks like drawers, small drawers behind me. Tools, negative tools. And just the chair with the screen or screens and all the cables, and it's like a huge machine.
What do the screens look like?
There is a main screen that looks blue.
What size is it?
Small, like the size of a laptop screen.
And in relation to your body, where is it?
Right above my head.
How close is it to you?
Some inches above me.
So it's very close. What's on the screen?
I only see blue light.
And how do you feel in the chair?
Attached, trapped, unable to move. I feel heavy.
Do you know how long you've been there?
What feels like a lifetime.
Do you have any memories of where you were before you were in the chair?
So many memories have been erased during the process. I can only recall the chair and someone with a black suit.
Do you know if all the memories in that lifetime have been erased up until that point? Was that the purpose?
Yes, so that the programming could take place and affect the next incarnations.
What about the memories before that lifetime? Are they affected?
No, they are intact somewhere,
So it's
inaccessible.
just that current lifetime that the device is working on.
That one and many other similar lifetimes.
Do you know what else the purpose is of the device attached to you? What else is it doing?
Create darkness in my programming, what you would call bad decisions based on scarcity, perceptions of scarcity,
Scarcity as in not having much?
loss, loss of everything, anything you can come up with, loss of connection, just anything they want you to believe that you lose.
And the purpose of that affects that current lifetime if you get released and future lifetimes, or does it affect other lifetimes as well?
It affects everything, every lifetime you can imagine. When you perceive loss and scarcity, and others go through the same process, it is much easier for them to control you and for you to base your decisions upon those perceived losses so that you can get involved into any kind of dark decision.
Does it increase the chances of making bad decisions?
Yes, highly, because you no longer feel reality for what it is: interconnectedness, love, joy. It creates despair and distortion.
Do you know why they are doing that to you?
So that I could be part of their experiments and learn about what love is not, so that I could learn to forget what love truly is and who I really am.
Did you voluntarily agree to going through that experience?
At soul level, I did, but I forgot.
And like you said, the reason you made that choice was so you could have that experience around love and what it isn't.
Yes, it is the only way possible for a human being to remember only darkness at subconscious level without feeling the love that permeates all. It is like a way of blocking you, blocking your memories, and the program goes on and on.
And do you know who those people are that are responsible?
They do not want to be known
Why?
because they would be targets from the collective.
Is that location a physical location on Earth?
It is irrelevant in the sense that it is here on Earth and everywhere else in the universe, because it has been played out many times.
And why wouldn't they want to be targets? What reason?
It would be dangerous for them and in a certain way for us, because they contain the knowledge on how it all started, and they must retrieve themselves from their own darkness. They must remember who they are as well. So the solution is not to engage in vengeful attitudes towards them, but instead, first, to get out of this by ourselves and then show them the way out.
So through finding out their identity, that would interfere with their contract and path
Yes,
in a negative way. Yeah. Have you learned what you come or came to learn by going through that experience?
yes, yes. But now I must remember what was before the experience. I must undo this.
So you no longer need to go through it. You've learned enough.
No, no, not anymore.
Do you know now how to undo that?
Not yet, but getting there, because the trauma is too strong to endure consciously. It has to come in pieces. It has to be undone slowly. I must retrieve what I can in this lifetime.
So it's not something that can just be fixed immediately.
No,
And why is it important that you have that memory, that direct experience just now?
because it is a starting point in which I can start breaking through this programming, questioning myself where it comes from, and then feeling little by little what happened. Then I can start retrieving what was beyond this programming, what was originally placed before all of us.
And like you explained, it can't be fixed on the spot. Is that because of being in a human body and the limitations of being human?
Yes, but it must be done in human form, because otherwise it cannot be brought forth to earth. So it must be done slowly, retrieved little by little, so that our emotional bodies do not collapse from the trauma and the information is overwhelming.
And has this taken place to other souls in other races, or is it just Earth-based?
No, it all started with what we call ultra galactics. That means the ultra source of it all, in the form of beings of light and love, who chose to experience this. So it has taken place in many sectors of the universe, in many galaxies, many species, not just the reptilians, for example, or the devils, or the insects. It has been done too many times, but each time there is something different, it is more complex because it adds up to the previous experiences. So now you have the cosmic human on Earth experiencing all kinds of darknesses at once from many species, from our galactic past and beyond.
Are there other methods of doing what is taking place in the chair, or is that the only way of doing that?
There are many, like in rituals, like in violence, but violence is a consequence of it all. Whole original dark methods involving experimentation to figure out what was beyond love, meaning like distorting everything that once was. So the chair represents one of the worst methods because it involves artificial intelligence in combination with the previous programmings. What you get to see in the screens is like your worst nightmares, but through impulses with the cabling, the cables, and the other gadgets. You get to experience it as if it was all too very real, and it messes up with your memories to trigger the very worst experiences. And for that reason, it must be undone slowly over time. Otherwise, it is too much for the soul to bear in conscious human form. I must only start triggering the feeling of this room, of this chair, of this place, and recognize fully the faces of the people who did this. I already got the idea, but it must be done in such a way that I can start this process more consciously and have patience. And then we can move forward to the next question. The process is already happening. I am holding her now, this part of my consciousness who experienced this trauma. The energy is being liberated, released. There will be many questions like, why did it have to be this way, so hard, and so on over the coming days and weeks as a natural response to the trauma, so that others can follow if they feel like they want to go through the experience of releasing themselves from this kind of programming.
To find healing.
Yes.
And as you said, you're holding that part of you. Can you share any more about what that experience is like?
Despair, loss of sense of reality, this triggered subconsciously every day with the constructs of this matrix. When you are shown just about anything that triggers loss in you, so then you avoid it. You do just anything to avoid it, avoid the feeling of loss and despair. and you get stuck even further.
What is taking place just now?
The feeling of fear of releasing this experience and for people to know about it.
And that's what you're doing. You are releasing it just now.
Yes, it is being released slowly. During the coming days, there will be the need to release more of it. It will be done on automatic, and it is safe for anyone to do this, but it requires patience, patience with oneself.
And what are you doing exactly to release it?
Moving the energy, releasing the patterns, the lies of the program, so that new neural pathways can be created and new information can come forth in the form of the ancient memories of love.
Just let me know when you are ready to move on.
We can now move on because this process will be ongoing. I will be sure to trigger it when it is needed and when it can be done, so we can move through the rest of the session. Images flashing of wars, bullets flying, the ones involved in those experiments fighting against each other. This part of me carrying weapons, cities resembling something like your larger cities here on Earth at night, where there is crime.
And you said wars. Are you seeing more than one, or is it just one?
It is one being repeated over and over again.
At the same location?
It shows us one location, but it is many, many locations because it has taken place many times in many places.
And what is the war about?
Families fighting over nothing real at all. Power disputes, anger, sadness, betrayals.
And you said those responsible for what took place with you fighting each other?
Yes, over and over again.
And are these humans?
Yes, I see them as humans.
And you said you saw yourself with weapons. So what role have you played in the wars?
Same as them, being involved in their wars. They blame me for many things.
Who blames you?
Those gentlemen, because they do not understand each other and themselves. They forgot who they are, so they believe blindly in those wars. I believe them at some point, but I want to come out of them and show them the way out through example. But it is currently not possible, too dangerous to approach them.
Do you mean in the wars it's been too dangerous?
Yes,
And
they believe too much of it.
yeah. And when you were in the chair, had they also forgotten who they were?
Yes, they have already forgotten, at least in that final time when the chair was last played out. Before that, there is a sequence of events in which they forgot more and more and more, reaching that point of being stuck in this loop.
Are they aware on a soul level that they volunteered to play out all of that?
Yes, but they forgot. So the illusion is too big for them. They must retrieve enough of themselves in human form to start remembering. Otherwise, when they come back over and over again in human form or even in non-human form, they play out the wars. So they must retrieve that part of their souls in human form.
And do you know how many of them there are?
Millions already. Millions because of how many people have gotten involved in those wars. You see those wars playing out every day, everywhere, within families, within groups, within corporations. So we are just a handful few representing the rest.
And when you say you want to help them remember, do you know how many of you there are?
If a few can remember, then it can trigger a ripple effect large enough to start showing others exactly how to do this.
But with the specific goal of what you're trying to achieve, which is to help them remember, do you know how many souls or humans there are that are in a similar situation to you?
So many of the ones you call awakened are still being affected by this programming. So we have all started releasing ourselves from the program with our healing methods, but we must dig deeper and help each other more by going within ourselves and find the programs, the original programs, and release ourselves from it. The problem is that currently we are being faced with decisions in the usage of artificial intelligence that can reprogram us to stay stuck indefinitely, once again playing out.
Is there anything specific about one of the wars you are seeing that's important? Or is it just a combination?
It is just the same story playing over and over again.
And do you know what time period this has been taking place? Earth time?
With these people, it was a long time ago, in a civilization very similar to the one you know of currently. It was called Neo Arcadia, similar to Atlantis. It was perhaps the most similar one to our current times before the great fall of civilizations like Lemuria and Atlantis.
So would you say that would be about 12,000 years?
Much
Or
more.
would it be hundreds of thousands of years or more?
It was like a million years ago.
And you said this is taking place on other locations in the universe?
From your perspective of time and space, yes, but only in the astral realms, because it has already taken place physically eons ago, and it has progressed to reach the point here on Earth in which we are being affected by these astral emanations from other galaxies and star systems, which is the reason why people have begun the process of recalling the ancestral past and dealing with heavy astral influences here on Earth from our ancient past that took place physically.
And do you get a sense of what the best way is for you to help those that are stuck and need to be reminded of who they are?
Patience, observation, allow more light to come forth through my soul so that when the right time comes, I can teach this knowledge to others and help them in physical.
So when you say physical, you mean your life back in the room?
Not anymore in this room, but here in the now, through soul retrieval.
As in having clients and helping them do soul retrieval?
Perhaps not in the sense of calling them clients, but helping many friends who in turn can help other friends and so on.
Mm. And do you see anything else now with all those scenes of the war? Is there anything new?
There is much sadness in this soul, the one you call Karla, because she is unaware of the extent or magnitude of this situation, and it triggers often hopelessness when she gets a glimpse on how stuck the group she aims to help is. Although in order to help others, she must first retrieve as much as she can from her own traumatized soul.
But she's not alone with this process, is she?
She still has much to learn from the experience.
Are there many others like her going through a similar experience?
Lots of people, yes, the ones who aim to wake up and get out of this matrix, but who face solitude or what they perceive as negative environments that trigger subconsciously these memories of the programming.
Is there anything that can take place now to help acknowledge and heal from these constant wars and situations that are going on?
Yes, first, this kind of programming based on artificial intelligence must be undone through methods like this one. Retrieve this information at individual level so that we can come out of this and learn to discern from these technologies, because we already have the knowledge in front of us of what is harmful to us collectively and individually, but we have not rejected enough of it, and we still collectively do not focus more on the positive of what once was natural without these technologies we depend upon.
So it's important to remember these things for each individual so they can heal.
Yes, but mostly to go out to nature as often as possible. Hold on to a tree, for example, and feel. The most important thing here is to remain grounded and process as much trauma as possible with the aid of nature, to start recalling, and also to practice healing methods like this one to bring about resolution, and not aim to reincarnate, not aim to avoid the pain of loss, of any kind of loss, but instead to embrace pain, allow it to flow, and ask the earth to take it away, knowing it is just a temporary illusion that we do not have to go through over again. Do not suppress emotions. Do not suppress the feelings of loneliness, and instead just let them wash away until the programming fades, and be conscious. Bring to your consciousness what is artificial, what is illusion.
And is there anything more about that scene that needs to be shared just now before we move on?
Not for now, but in another session we can go through more details as the information becomes downloaded and integrated into this body.
Okay.
Do not fear beings like reptilians or your governments, because they can only work through you if you allow the suppression of emotions to take place. I am being shown something that puzzles this consciousness, but it will be shown more like an example as to what needs to be understood. She finds herself at a large round table, and there are many figures that appear to be you as Laron, like many Larons, all at once, sitting in this round table. And the reason why we are showing this to her and telling you about it is because you all as humans are tesseracts, meaning you exist in multiple realms at once. Through soul retrieval, you become one single man. You reach 0 point. You remove the artificial constructions of space and time and space. But it can only happen if every Laron and every Karla sitting at this round table can allow all of these feelings to pass through with patience, with compassion for oneself before anything else, with mercy for every perceived dark decision, knowing that in the end it was meant to be done only for the purpose of experience, but it no longer has to be repeated, so that these aspects or this tesseract can merge as one single consciousness, which becomes the higher self embodied with all the knowledge of all times.
And can that take place in the physical, like back in the room for us both?
Yes, it can be done. One of the restrictions that the human mind has is to believe that in order to stop suffering, we must leave our physical bodies, which is not true. We can enjoy a very pleasant, peaceful existence if we let go and we become embodied. It can be here on earth or elsewhere in this universe.
And what is an appropriate method for both of us to make that process work, the soul retrieval coming together?
Review what you perceive to be your losses. Go one by one without distraction. Feel them at the core of your heart and your solar plexus. Feel, sense your energy bodies. Sense all of these traumas. Allow them to come back to you so that eventually we can all come out of the illusion.
So that needs to be done in relation to past relationships. Should it also be done in connection to parents or guardians when growing up?
Yes, sometimes our parents are there to show to us what love is not instead of otherwise. But since we carry the knowledge within of what love is and has always been, we only need to break through the pains of childhood and other stages of our lives and connect to our higher selves to show to us the contrast. It is all about contrast. But we have been stuck for so long in negative patterns that we face too often painful relationships because our relationship with ourselves is perceived as broken because we have forgotten over time how to truly be loving and compassionate to ourselves.
And what's some practical things we can do to be loving and compassionate to ourselves?
When we process what we perceive as negative emotions or personal judgments, instead of trying to disguise them or suppress them, just embrace them. We can think and feel how we are like a loving parent and then take back to us those parts of us that judge themselves often and to step out of the social conditioning of what we think we should be instead of what we really are. We must allow all what we perceive to be as negative to express itself without judgment and to allow ourselves to feel and to avoid distractions presented to us in the form of artificial intelligence and other kinds of distractions.
Is there anything you can do right now to help Karla achieve this healing that you speak of?
Yes, I will bring now to the surface from her subconsciousness the trauma of an ancient mother she had, who was originally her loving mother, her loving caretaker. It is not the same mother as the one she has in this current lifetime, but one who heavily programmed her to believe that she was unworthy. This mother helped her experience darkness in paradigms like negative ancient Egypt or reptilian past lives or other similar life forms. And this programming has been interfering greatly towards her goals, but she often forgets about this figure, about this soul. But this soul often aims to become a better person who can reflect the light and the love that she originally is. But Karla is not allowed to know where this woman is here on earth because it would interfere greatly with her path. So she was assigned a different mother this time, who in much resembles this other mother, but who has a different kind of programming as to interfere less with her current path.
And does any time need to pass just now for all of that to take place?
It will be done during the course of several weeks, but the process has already started. In fact, it started a few nights ago when she became aware of this presence. She was already aware many years ago, but it was not the right timing to focus more on this mother figure. So now the dark energy is flowing. It feels dense, it feels heavy. If you were to translate it, it looks black, like black energy. So over the course of several weeks, much of this programming will be released.
So right now, are there any past lives that Karla needs to return to and experience to help her today?
Yes, I will name just a few, but I will not go too deep into details because it pertains this mother figure. For example, there was ancient Egypt, in which this mother figure represented the very worst of mothers because she was involved in daily disputes of power, and she fed this kind of programming into the Egyptian aspect of Karla, and her whole family was involved in a huge conflict. It was an ancient conflict over power, and beneath that need for power was something else, the need to remember what it was like to be a family without that growing dependence on, on power. Another similar one was in the constellation where Sirius still exists as a star, Sirius B. This family was involved in scientific projects, but you could say from lower density perspective that things went awfully wrong with this family because much knowledge was kept and she was taught to hide important knowledge. It is similar to what we experience in human life here on Earth through our mainstream science, in which much of the real knowledge that would benefit humanity is to be kept from the eye of society. But Karla, in this case, cannot be blamed as a soul because that is what the whole family intended to learn a long time ago, so that one day much knowledge can be released in positive ways. And many people are meant to do this here on Earth to unlock from these kinds of negative paradigms true knowledge that can help us all develop our real abilities to connect to each other in peaceful ways as a society. There was also a society of dragons. Algol is one of those clear examples of strife. The dark dragon mother who wounds her child with rejection and warlike attitudes, and then is inherited to the reptilian humanoid template, coming down to earth in human form. That is a summary of what needs to be undone now.
And so now that she's aware of those experiences, what is the next process to undo and release the blocks?
After a time period takes place of assimilation, we can start moving forward to the father figure, which is complex and necessary to undo. So we will leave that for another session.
So just now, are you able to allow Karla to have a temporary experience at this 0 point space or place with her higher self?
She had a small dose of it in her yesterday while she was having a walk. She experienced part of my love for her. It greatly encouraged her to come out of those feelings in which she feels like this world is often lacking in love and she feels insecure, knowing that even though there is great power within her, sometimes the experience can become a little too much. So I made sure to make some adjustments so she could assimilate part of me into her. She felt better. So she already has the knowledge within herself because the coming weeks will feel dense but rewarding. The dark energy is already flowing through this body. So we cannot grant her the joy of the experience, but she already has the memory of when it took place in her yesterday evening.
So right now, who am I speaking to exactly?
I am what you call the higher self, but when I say we, it is because I am a tesseract of experiences, meaning many positive aspects, creating one single consciousness, a supreme consciousness.
How many past lives and how many multiple experiences beyond a life would you say makes up what you are?
Too many. It is too many to state a number.
And would these that make up who you are, would this be far beyond, say, 1,000,000 years in the universe? Would it be much more than that?
Billions, eons, eons of experience. But what happens with the human consciousness is that usually you tend to focus on only a few guidelines like past lives or keynotes because we grant the knowledge of specific paradigms into those lifetimes, and the rest would be more like a long pattern of sequences that you just follow in a continuum, but you perceive them as broken because the lifespan tends to differ. For example, the current Earth human template tends to live much shorter than in previous paradigms in other kinds of life forms. For that reason, we prefer to call it just like a continuum of experiences that takes place in your human terms in eons or billions of years.
And what is the purpose that you have all these experiences?
Create the tesseract large enough in order to go back to the beginning, full circle.
What's at the beginning?
Nothing but harmony, peace, everlasting love, no constrictions, no loneliness, no despair, no feelings of being separated from each other, but still retaining an individual consciousness.
In relation to the source of all things, how would you describe your connection to that?
We are all the source of all things. We, as individual consciousnesses, are the supreme source of it all. But you have been so confused about this through your religions mostly, and even through some spiritual experiences, in which you tend to tap only into certain feelings of connection with all without being able to achieve the retaining of individual consciousness, which means that we are all supreme individuals with full power and full knowledge, but connected through each other without losing each other's individual consciousness.
So the source of what I am speaking to right now, which is you, would you say that you are God in a way?
Yes, you are God. Everyone is God. We are all gods and goddesses, but not in the way you have been portrayed through religions and ancient dark paradigms in which false gods would govern you through control and power.
So in reference to you, is there anything beyond you or above you or in control of you, or do you have a source? How would you describe that?
No, nothing controls me beyond myself, in the same way that nothing would control you beyond yourself. We are in harmony with each other, with ourselves, and we just exist always in that harmony and full remembrance of what we are.
So you would be the absolute.
Yes, the Alpha and the Omega you hear of, each one of us, each one of you. No beginning, no end, because time and space are just broken constrictions, broken perceptions.
And to also help us understand, when we compare my higher self to who I am speaking to now, is it the same thing or is it separate higher selves?
We are, to your mind, to your human mind, paradoxically individual and yet not, because we are so connected in mind and heart that we know each other for what we are. We communicate through natural energetic impulses, and we create a collective of God consciousness.
So just to clarify, do I have my own higher self, or do we
Yes,
all have one?
we all have one. We are all the source. You only have to remember who you really are.
In that case, there would be, between Karla and Laron, there would be two higher selves. Is that right?
Yes, exactly.
But are you trying to say that it is really just one?
We retain individual consciousness. You can see it as, for example, balls of light connected to each other through threads of light, like a system. Does that make sense to you?
So, for example, one ball of light would be a higher self,
Yes,
and they can be connected. They are connected together.
yes,
So that would mean there's multiple higher selves.
yes, exactly. It's simply a different version of who you are because you perceive yourselves to be limited to your full power. You, you often feel disconnected first from yourselves, and that disconnection is what makes you perceive yourselves as disconnected from each other. But you are all gods and goddesses in your own right.
And at some point, do all these higher selves join together to make one?
Yes and no, we can retain our individual consciousness. What happens sometimes when people have spiritual experiences, when they perceive themselves as only one energy, is that people are not retaining individual consciousness from their higher selves. Instead, we can, if we want to, reach that kind of experience. But since we are all creators, then we retain our individual consciousness as gods and goddesses, each one of us, each one of you, and we connect to each other through those threads of light, and we feel the unity of us all without the restrictions of time and space.
So just returning to the first scene that she saw today with the quite a tall man with horns. What was the reason, or what was important about that coming up for her today?
It was an important key note of experience to remind her how we all became stuck into those experiences from your standpoint of lower densities, which means that you can see it as like an idea in which you repeat over and over again this pattern of wanting to know how exactly to go back to us, to what we truly are. And you think that you have to pour the darkness outside of yourself and just leave it there. But in reality, everything must be retrieved within yourselves with acceptance and the higher values of compassion, mercy, respect, and many other values, so that we can all go back to that moment before this ideal of just letting darkness sort itself out.
So the male with the horns, he had fatigue, he was tired. Is there anything that can be done to help him?
We can all help him by becoming conscious of these artificial intelligence programs and all the things that we do in our daily lives to suppress our emotions and the acceptance and maturity we need in order to overcome them. And one of the paths is not just precisely the acceptance of emotions, but also through these methods of communicating with us directly so that we can assist even further on doing these programs.
So the next scene that came up was Karla in that chair, where we got quite a lot of information to help her. But is there anything you can do just now to help her heal and detach from what was done to her?
Yes, as I speak to you right now, I am dissolving many of those connections to the chair and to her original programmers. But the process must unfold at the right timing from now until it can be completed in such a way that her consciousness does not become overwhelmed. For now, I am undoing many of these patterns and programs, and the rest will follow.
And once again, we return to that round table you recently spoke of, where you shared the importance of integrating and soul retrieval. So I'll ask again if there's anything else practical that we can do to help with that process.
Help each other become aware. Practice daily meditation in silence so that you can start recognizing all of these aspects, all of these facets of your soul, of the souls of everyone, and mostly learn to stop fearing what you think or see as dark. For example, certain archetypes, like if, for example, you come across an aspect that takes a certain shape or form that looks or feels fearful. Let's say, for example, a black magician, a reptilian, an insectoid, just anything that you would judge, just connect to them, to their hearts, embrace them as we do as higher selves with acceptance, learn to feel the hearts of these aspects, and it will greatly help you come out of this matrix.
So Karla wants to know what the perspective is of her higher self about this lifetime.
Nothing more than the experience of undoing and merging fully with me.
Is there anything else that she should check in on to make sure she's on the right path?
Her doubts and fears are normal. She has been overwhelmed for too long by certain experiences in the forms of mirrors. By mirrors, I mean other people who display the kind of wounding she went through in her current experience and previous experiences. She must learn not to fear to express herself as she is, even if she comes across judgment, which is all too common in the current society you all live in, and to learn to express her gifts first on her own and let the path in front of her unfold, for I am the one to protect her the most.
Can you do a scan just now of her body and check her health?
Yes, within the area of lungs, above shoulders, her back, there are some dark energies from the previous difficult relationship she had, along with many others. It is a few that are dark, but necessary to understand and to process in the form of removal. When these energies touch the layers of the body, it feels like discomfort and like temporarily appearing cancers. I am the one guiding her through the process of removing these energies. There are still many to work out, but nothing that could be considered life threatening anymore. The worst of that perceived process is already over, as she has regained much of her consciousness over the years already as to how to work out these negative energies surrounding her and how she must feel herself with my own energies replacing these negative energies.
Are you able to completely restore her health 100% right now? Or is there a reason she cannot immediately heal?
She cannot heal 100% right now because it is a process that takes time in your human terms. It could overwhelm the body because I am meant to integrate as much as possible from her past experiences, like what we already explored, for example, through the experiences of those chairs. That is one of the reasons. Another reason is because it also depends on the collective flow of energies of several people involved in this process. However, I am always observing the process and making sure that nothing bad happens to this body as to make it not functional.
Are there any final messages Higher Self wants to give us today before we finish?
You must all restore your inner balance by allowing the energies of nature pass through you, through all your blocks. And that is simply by disconnecting every day from the daily technological distractions that you face, and mostly by being compassionate to yourselves, to those aspects or sides of you that for so long you have been taught to suppress or to fear or simply to dislike. Just learn to feel everything that you see in front of the mirror. go within in meditation. A few minutes every day can make a great difference from where you stand now and from where we are heading to.